Hello, everyone. Welcome to the serial lectures on traditional Chinese culture. Today, we will work on Confucianism, the root of traditional Chinese ideology. I'd like to begin with a painting, Three Vinegar Tasters. In the middle, we can see a vat of vinegar. Three tasters are sitting around the vat of vinegar. Confucius is having a sour look on his face. Buddha, in the middle, is wearing a bitter expression. Lao Tzu is smiling. Shall we try to interpret the painting? The painting is intended to be allegorical, and each of the three men represents one of the three teachings of China: Confucianism, Buddhism, and Taoism. The vinegar they are tasting represents the essence of life. Confucianism saw life as sour, in need of rules to correct the degeneration of people. The lofty ideal is to enter the world, to cultivate oneself, build up a harmonious family, rule the country, and conquer the world. Buddhism saw life as bitter, dominated by pain and suffering. Taoism saw life as fundamentally good in its natural state. The lofty ideal is to escape the world, to be detached and secluded. Confucianism, Taoism, and Buddhism are the three main ideological streams of China. Here we can see Confucius, the great sage, Lao Tzu, the supreme patriarch, and Sakyamuni, the Buddha. Chinese people are very tolerant as to religion. In some places, the statues of Confucius, Lao Tzu, and Sakyamuni are enshrined together, side by side. Shall we learn something about the life of Confucius? Confucius is Kong Qiu. Kong is his surname, and Qiu is the given name, meaning a sacred hill. He is also known as Konfuzi, Master Kong, and Zhongni is his alias. Alias is the social or academic name. It was the Jesuit missionaries of the 17th century who came to call him Confucius, and this Latinate name has since become known to the West. Confucius was born at Qufu in the state of Lu in what is now Shandong province. He was a contemporary of Sakyamuni. Confucius was poor when he was young. He endured a poverty-stricken and humiliating youth. Upon reaching manhood, he had been forced to undertake such petty jobs as accounting and caring for livestock. He said, I was humble when young. That is why I'm skilled in many menial things. At 50, he was appointed Minister of Crime of the Lu state. Then he was forced to leave office and go to exile. He left Lu and traveled in various states, looking for a ruler who might employ him. He wandered about from court to court, attempting to convince rulers of the right way to govern, but meeting instead with indifference. He returned to Lu and spent the rest of his life teaching, putting ancient classics in order. He became a professional teacher with 3,000 students. Among them, 72 disciples were famous Confucians. His last years were saddened by the death, first of his son, and then of his favorite disciple, Yan Hui, at an early age. Confucius had summarized his life. He said, at 15, I aspired to learning. At 30, I established my stand. At 40, I had no delusions, no doubts. At 50, I knew my destiny. At 60, I knew truth in all I heard. At 70, I could follow the wishes of my heart without doing wrong. These verses are very popular in China. If a lady is 40 years old, she is at the age of no delusions, no doubts. Confucius, we can say, is the nominal father of Chinese ideology. Confucius is venerated as the highest sage and primary teacher, a teacher of all generations. He is a philosopher, moralist, statesman, and educator, but not a personal god. Chinese scholars honored Confucius as a great sage, but did not worship him as a god. Nor did Confucius himself ever claim divinity. Now shall we probe into the development of Confucianism? Confucius lived in the spring and autumn periods, the troubled age of transition from slave to feudalist society. The collapse of etiquette and the deterioration of music implied that the ethics and moralities of society were in decline. The intellectuals were concerned about the social order. Hence, 100 schools of brilliant sort, such as legalists, Taoists, Mohists, mathematicians thrived. This is often regarded as the most exciting time for Chinese philosophers, as no single doctrine dominated their lives. Confucius' proposal was to discipline oneself and to revive the ethics of Zhou dynasty. He brought forward a series of norms which, step by step, developed into Confucianism. Confucianism was further developed by Mencius and Xunzi of the Warring States period. It was during the reign of Emperor Wu in the Eastern Han Dynasty that Confucianism was promoted to be the state ideology. Since then, Confucianism became the orthodox doctrine, and Confucius was glorified as a saint. In the coming dynasties, Confucianism coexisted with Buddhism and Taoism, and the struggle for dominance between the three became heated. The Song dynasty witnessed a vital development of Confucianism, known as Neo-Confucianism. Zhu Xi of the Southern Song dynasty compiled the Confucian classics into 4 books and 5 classics, which were handed down from generation to generation. Here is the portrait of Zhu Xi. Confucianism restored its orthodox rule for the following 700 years. It became the official ideology, but it has never existed as an established religion. Confucianism spread from China to Korea, Japan, and Vietnam. The Confucianism Cultural Circle is also known as East Asia Cultural Circle. Here on the map, China, Korea, Japan, and Vietnam are all located in East Asia. It is also called Chinese Character Cultural Circle because they all use Chinese characters. Confucianism is the prevalent ideology in this circle, together with Mahayana Buddhism, the big vehicle Buddhism. Confucian culture is the nucleus of behavior in East Asia, just as Christianity is essential for people's behavior in the West. In order to understand the people of East Asia, who now constitute almost 1/4 of the world population, Confucian study is a must. The doctrines of Confucianism are contained in 9 ancient works handed down by Confucius and his followers. These teachings can be divided into 2 groups, the 4 books and 5 classics. They were compiled by Zhu Xi of the Southern Song dynasty. Before we work on the Confucian teachings, I'd like to brief you on the 4 categories of ancient books. Chinese people could read the ancient books written 3,000 years ago. However, there are so many ancient books, it's like a vast expanse of sea. How to classify those books? Some scholars are especially engaged in the classification of ancient books. According to their research work, Chinese ancient books fall into 4 categories. Confucian classics rank first, including 13 classics of Confucianism, mainly 5 classics and 4 books. As to historical records, there are 3 styles. Historic books written in biographical style, like the 24 histories. Annals or chronicles written in chronological order, like the spring and autumn annals. Historic books in separate accounts of important events. So, 3 styles according to historic figure, time sequence, and important events. As to philosophical writings, there are various schools of ancient philosophers, including Confucianists, Taoists, Mohists, legalists, military strategists, Buddhists, mathematicians, etc. And miscellaneous literature, the anthology of prose, essay, verse, poetry, literary criticism, drama, etc. The main Confucian classics include the 5 classics and 4 books. The 5 classics originated before the time of Confucius. Confucius was thought to be either the editor or author. Classic of Changes or Book of Changes, Canon of Changes. Classic of Changes is the number 1 canon of Confucianism. It is a manual of divination, of prediction, probably compiled before the 11th century BC. Its philosophical appendixes, known as 10 Wings, may have been written by Confucius and his disciples. Confucius was thought to be one of the 3 authors. Classic of History. Confucius was thought to be the editor. He sorted out the historical documents. Classic of Poetry or a Book of Songs. Confucius was thought to be the editor of the anthology of poems. Classic of Rites or a Book of Rites, of ritual, courtesy, concerning the code of conduct at public and private ceremonies. Confucius was thought to be the editor. Spring and autumn annals Confucius was thought to be the author of the Chronicle. The 4 books are intimately concerned with Confucianism, collecting the sayings of Confucius and mentions and commentaries by followers. They are, namely, the Great Learning, the Doctrine of the Mean, Analects of Confucius, and the Book of Mentions. Both the Great Learning and the Doctrine of the Mean originated from the Classic of Rites, or Book of Rites, recording the philosophical utterances with comments and expositions. Mencius was a great follower of Confucius. The Analects of Confucius was compiled by his disciples many years after his death. It is the Bible of Confucianism, forming the basis of his moral and political philosophy. It is a collection of maxims of Confucius and conversations between the teacher and the disciples. Shall we probe into the teachings of Confucianism? The doctrines of Confucianism are reflected in 3 main aspects of ethics, morality, politics, and education. The teachings of Confucianism are firstly reflected in ethics, advocating the 5 cardinal virtues and 3 cardinal guides, and 5 relationships. A person who possesses all these virtues becomes a gentleman. People compare the 5 cardinal virtues to a tree. Benevolence, 仁, is the root of the tree. Righteousness, 义, is the trunk. Propriety, 礼, is the branch. Wisdom, 智, is the flower. Trustworthiness, 信, is the fruit. Heaven, earth, and man are the 3 grades in ancient ideology. In the earth, there are 5 substances: metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. Correspondingly, in the heaven, there are 5 planets: Venus, Jupiter, Mercury, Mars, and Saturn. In human society, there are 5 cardinal virtues of Confucianism: benevolence, righteousness, propriety, wisdom, and trustworthiness. The keynote of Confucian ethics is 仁, variously translated as benevolence, humanity, human-heartedness, love, goodness. Ren is the supreme virtue. The character is an associative compound. The left part meaning person. The right component meaning two. The relationship between two persons is mutual love. Ren means to love others. People should love one another. Now, shall we learn some maxims, some verses? When his student Fan Chi asked him about Ren, Confucius replied, love of people. Ren means to love others. Only the humane person is able to really like others or to really dislike them. The greatest love for people is the love of one's parents. Love for people is universal love. This kind of love should begin with the love of one's parents. Confucius believed that no one could love people in general if they did not even love their own parents. He regarded filial piety and fraternal duty as the essence of benevolence. There are 3 sacrificial rites in Confucianism: worshipping heaven and earth, worshipping ancestors, and worshipping sages and men of virtue. People worship the heaven and earth. For example, Temple of Heaven is located in the south of Beijing. Emperors used to worship the heaven in winter solstice. Temple of Earth is located in the north of Beijing. Emperors used to worship the earth in summer solstice. Temple of Sun is located in the east of Beijing. Temperors used to worship the sun in spring equinox. Temple of Moon is located in the west of Beijing. Emperors would like to worship the moon in autumn equinox. People worship their ancestors. However unsuccessful or mean a person was when he was alive, whenever he died, he became the ancestor and would be worshipped. People worship their ancestors at home in traditional festivals, at tombs in pure brightness, and also at ancestral temples. Emperors worship in the imperial ancestral temple to the west front of the Forbidden City. Here is the ancestral temple of the Huang family. In traditional wedding, the newlyweds first worship the heaven and earth. Secondly, worship their parents. And thirdly, worship one another. In this picture, the newlyweds kowtow to their parents. People also worship sages and men of virtue. There are numerous Confucius temples in towns and countless temples of Guanyu in the countryside. A man of wisdom finds pleasure in the scenery of water, while a man of virtue finds pleasure in the scenery of mountain. A man of wisdom is active, while a man of virtue is tranquil. A man of wisdom enjoys happiness, while a man of virtue enjoys longevity. A man of virtue is free from anxiety. A man of wisdom is free from perplexity. A man of courage is free from fear. Unbending strength, resoluteness, simplicity, and slowness of speech are characters close to Ren. Skillful words and pretentious appearance, certainly not Ren. The virtuous is sure to possess courage, but the courageous does not necessarily possess Ren. Ren is the ability to practice the 5 characters everywhere: courtesy, magnanimity, trustworthiness, smartness, and generosity. With courtesy, there is no arrogance. With magnanimity, there is support from people. With trustworthiness, there are entrusted responsibilities. With smartness, there is merit. With generosity, people can be employed on their free will. To completely overcome selfishness and keep to propriety is Ren. 曾子 said, Ren is manifested in 忠 and 恕. 忠, faithfulness to oneself and others. 恕, decency, altruism. One should be aware that other people may have similar desires as oneself. While fulfilling one's desire, allow others to fulfill their desires as well. Do not do to others what you do not want done to yourself, is the Confucian golden rule. Just like what Queen Elizabeth II said in her Christmas speech. Therefore, all things whatsoever ye would that men should do to you, do ye even so to them. Ren and Li are the 2 core concepts of Confucian doctrine. Li includes both propriety and ritual. Propriety, including a set of manners of how to behave in a given situation. If you don't learn Li, propriety, you will have no footing. If you govern people legalistically and control them by punishment, they will avoid crime but have no personal sense of shame. If you govern them by means of virtue and control them with propriety, they will gain their own sense of shame and thus correct themselves. Here are the three cardinal guides. Ruler guides subject. Father guides son. Husband guides wife. Thus, subject must obey ruler. Son must obey father. Wife must obey husband. In ancient China, women were inferior to men. A woman was expected to obey her father before marriage, obey her husband after marriage, and obey her son after her husband's death. Confucius held that society was made up of 5 relationships. The relationship between ruler and minister was benevolence versus loyalty. The emperor was supposed to care for his subject like a father, and a minister should be loyal to the emperor. The relationship between parent and child was kindness versus filial piety. The parents should be kind and benevolent, and the kids should be filial and pious. The relationship between elder and youngster was gentility versus humility. The elder should be gentle and gracious, while the youngster should love and respect the elder brother, being humble. The relationship between husband and wife was righteousness versus obedience. The husband should be righteous and upright, and the wife should obey the husband, being obedient. The relationship between friends was consideration versus deference. The friendship should be based on mutual understanding and mutual respect. The 5 relationships must be clarified and cannot be confused. A person who possesses all these virtues becomes a gentleman, known as 君子. Thus, a gentleman is a virtuous man, a superior man, a perfect gentleman, a man of great morality, and a good model for people. To be a 君子, a perfect gentleman, one should develop the following merits and personalities: loyal to his ruler, loving his family, wise and brave, modest and humble, honest and sincere, kind and generous, having a heart of gratitude and a feeling of shame in doing something wrong. There are so many maxims concerning 君子, the perfect gentleman, really inspiring and encouraging. The superior man cares about virtue. The inferior man cares about material things. The superior man seeks discipline. The inferior man seeks favor. When you see a virtuous person, think of becoming the one like him. When you see someone not so good, reflect on your own weak points. A person of virtue will not be lonely, for many people like to follow him. A virtuous man has 3 alls, all for heaven's decree, all for great men, all for saints' words. The superior man is satisfied and composed. The mean man is always full of distress. The gentleman encompasses all and is not partial. The petty man is partial and does not encompass all. The superior man desires to be hesitant in speech, but sharp in action. A superior man seeks for Tao, not for food. A superior man worries about Tao, not about poverty. Tao is the truth, the law of universe. The superior man is unlike the implement, which can only be used for a certain purpose. The superior man has lofty ideals and noble aspirations. For the gentleman, there are 9 things he needs to take notice of. In seeing, he must seek understanding. In hearing, he must listen with clarity. His countenance must be cordial. His demeanor must be respectful. Be conscientious when he speaks. Be serious in his tasks. Seek advice when in doubt. Think of future trouble when in anger. Think of what is right at the sight of gain. Zunzi said, I judge myself on 3 matters every day. Whether I was faithful when giving advice to others, whether I was sincere when dealing with friends, and whether I practiced the teachings my master taught me. In success, one tries to benefit others. In adversity, one tries to attain self-cultivation. the superior man seeks to perfect the admirable qualities of men, and does not seek to perfect their bad qualities. There are 4 characteristics of superior man. In his private conduct, he is courteous. In serving superiors, he is respectful. In providing for people, he is kind. In dealing with people, he is just. The teachings of Confucianism are reflected in politics, advocating policy of benevolence, rectification of name, and the order of development. Confucius looks for a community that works by virtue and morality rather than punishment and rules, advocating policy of benevolence. He calls for the wise sage to be a ruler. Confucianism was opposed to tyranny. Tyranny is more ferocious than a tiger. A country would be well governed when all the parties performed their parts aright. To be more specific, a country would be well governed only when rulers were rulers, ministers were ministers, fathers were fathers, sons were sons. This is known as rectification of name. In serving the prince, one should be intent upon the task, not bent upon the pay. Here, prince refers to the king of a small state. A gentleman should be absorbed in the work. He should not care about the reward. Confucius set forth the order of development as follows: self-cultivation, family discipline to build up a harmonious family, local self-government to rule the state, and universal self-government to conquer the world step by step. To be specific, the order of development can be illustrated as things investigated, genuine knowledge acquired. Genuine knowledge acquired, thoughts purified. Thoughts purified, hearts rectified. Hearts rectified, personalities cultivated. Personalities cultivated, families regulated. Families regulated, states well governed. States well governed, the whole world will be in peace and tranquility. Step by step. The doctrines of Confucianism are also reflected in education. Confucius is venerated as a teacher of all generations. He initiated private education. He was the first person to open a private school to ordinary people. Before Confucius, only the nobility was entitled to education. The course content includes morality, great virtue, love of people, proper speech, government, and 6 refined arts. The pedagogical method or teaching method is interactive. Confucius poses questions or uses apt analogies and waits for his students to arrive at the right answers. The educational goal is to cultivate superior men. Confucius taught for many years and trained 3,000 disciples. Among them, 72 excelled in 6 arts. The 6 refined arts include ritual, music, carriage driving, archery, calligraphy, and mathematics. Confucianism attached much importance to ritual and music. Besides nourishing the mind, music was also used to govern the country. Here we can see Confucius and his disciples. There are many maxims concerning education, really wise and intelligent. Shall we learn some maxims together? Confucius upheld that in education there is no class distinction. Learning without satiety, without tiredness, instructing others without being weary. When 3 men are walking together, there is one who can be my teacher. I pick out people's good and follow it. When I see their bad points, I correct them in myself. To learn and to practice what is learned time and again is pleasure, isn't it? To have friends coming from afar is happiness, isn't it? Exploring the old and deducing the new make a teacher. Learning without thinking is useless. Thinking without learning is perilous, is dangerous. Zixia said, I would acknowledge that a man is indeed schooled if he revered virtue instead of beauty, devoted himself in serving his parents, exerted himself to the utmost in serving his Lord, and behaved with trustworthiness with his friends, even though he is not said to be schooled. To prefer it is better than only to know it. To delight in it is better than merely to prefer it. I will not be afflicted at men's not knowing me. I will be afflicted that I do not know men. What you know, you know. What you don't know, you don't know. This is knowledge. A jade without chiseling will not become a useful object. A man without learning will not know the Tao. Man at birth is good in nature. All men are nearly alike in nature. When they are growing, they become different from each other because of what they practice. If a student is not eager, I won't teach him. If he is not struggling with the truth, in search for the truth, I won't reveal it to him. If I lift up one corner and he can't come back with the other three, I won't do it again. Learning may incidentally lead to high pay, but a gentleman's anxiety concerns the progress of the way. He has no anxiety concerning poverty. Zigong asked, why is Kong Wenzi called Wen? Wen meaning elegant, learned. Confucius replied, he was quick and devoted to learning, and not ashamed to ask those below him. That is why he is called Wen. Confucius was born in the state of Lu, the present Shandong province. In Qufu, the Confucius Mansion, Confucius Temple, and Confucius Cemetery are, as a whole, listed among the World Cultural Heritage. Here is the front gate of Confucius Mansion. There are 2 stone lines before the front gate. The male line is playing with a ball, while the female one is stroking a baby lion. In China, northern lines are imposing and majestic, while southern lines are lively and vivacious. Here we can see the brilliant glazed tiles in Confucius Temple. The highlights of the Confucius Temple include the Hall of Great Achievements and the Apricot Altar. Confucius is honored as the sage of great achievements. The pillars of the hall are carved with intertwining dragons. Apricot Altar is the place where Confucius used to give lectures. Here is the Confucius Cemetery. The avenue leading to the tomb of the sage of all generations, is flanked by stone statues. We can also see the stone stele and the cemetery of the Confucius family. So much for today. Thank you very much.